Alright, I started recording. Start the Discord. Alright, welcome to another class. Our last class of Math 1130. And what we're going to do today is we're going to do a bunch of review for the final exam. And there's a couple of things to spot check. Could you just one thing to spot check. 4C by hand. If you have that, could you enter the word spot? 4C by hand. And the final exam is on Wednesday, March 13th, so it's a week from today, and it's the usual time, 1 to 3 is when you'll have for the final exam. I will post it so that it'll open during that window, and are there any questions anybody has pertaining to the final or thank you, Renata. I did that just before. Let me double check. Yep, it's recording. Any questions related to the final exam first off? If not, then any questions on any of the material? Any content questions? And if there's nothing there, then alright, let's jump into the review. And what I'm going to do for the review is, now a student showed me how to do this. Notice on the left side of my screen there are now 3 groups, left side of your screen too in Discord. Group 1, Group 2, Group 3. Alright, I'm going to assign you all to one of those groups, and I'm going to give you some questions, and then if you click on one of these groups, you'll be in there, and then you can type away, and you'll be just communicating with your group members there. And then when you want to get to the main text channel, you go to Text Channels General, click on this, and then you're back to this one. So you'll be back and forth between these for the rest of class today. You'll be assigned to one of these groups. You'll be over in here working in the group. I can come in and check in on the group, and if I see that you're struggling with some question, I might be able to give specific help to just that group, or maybe I'll just observe and then, talk to the general class about it. But then we'll come back to the general text channel at times. And so let me have the following people. We'll just go, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. So Ariana, Chris, and John, you 3 are in Group 1. Jose, Marlene, and Natalie, you're in Group 2. And Ren and Santana, you are in Group 3. All right, now, let me put the first review question up. And what I want you to do is, instead of reporting your answer on this, the general text channel, go into your group, talk about it with your group members, and then then I'll ask for feedback to the general channel. And you can either, each of you give, or you could appoint one member of the group to just type in the general channel, however you decide you want to do that. In one way, this is going to be more efficient than if I said, you know, you three, you group, talk about it. Because if you have 3 people in a group and you're talking about it, only one person can talk at a time. But here, all 3 of you will be able to type in your initial reaction, initial response, and then you can talk about your, 3 initial responses, and then see if maybe, you can say, this one makes more sense than the others, and then you can kind of report that to the bigger group. Okay. Ye Lozo 17. I'm not sure who that is, but that person is in group 3. You're going to join group 3. And all right, so let's go to the first question. Number 1. List all the common A measures of the middle. How do we measure the middle of a group of data? And then B, all the common measures of variation. What are all the different ways that we've mentioned that we can measure how much the data varies? All right, go in your groups, talk it out for a minute or so, and then I'll have you report out to the general group. And you might need to identify yourselves in the group, you might not, if you're using some kind of code name. I'll check in with various groups. Okay, group 1, Ariana, Chris, John. You can get into that channel. The others are working away. All right, so can you report back, come back to the general text channel, click on general, and then go ahead and give me what are the measures of the middle and what are all the measures of variation that we use. Okay, so mean and average are the same, and mean, median, mode, those are the three standard measures of the middle. There are more of those, but those are the main ones. For variation, the most common is the standard deviation, but there's another one that nobody's listed. Anybody? Yes, the range. How? It's just the difference between the largest number and the smallest number. And we use that range to get an estimate of the standard deviation. We divide it by 4, and it's a rough estimate of the standard deviation. All right, number 2. Let me swing over to, what are the 5 numbers in a box plot? And how do you use those 5 numbers in making the box plot? Okay. So, go in your groups, brainstorm, see if you can remember those. This is hopefully not an activity where you're looking things up, but you're just trying to see, what do I remember? What can I make sense of? Okay, and let's check out. Okay, so I'm looking at in the 3 groups, median, max, yes, okay, I like to see that one right there. That's describing, Marlene's got it. Good. All right, so let's go back in the general text. Well, let's go to the camera. So the box plot is, you wind up having the 5 numbers are the min, Q1, the median, Q3, and the max. And a line goes from the min all the way to the max. And the box is going to go, maybe Q1 is over here, maybe Q3 is over here, maybe the median is over here, or something like this. And these go in a box. And sometimes you don't have to have that middle number, that line going through the middle. Might just be missing this middle part. But either way it would be fine. And then the median would be right like this. All right. And another key item in a box plot is you can't put numbers like this. If this was 1, and this was 10, and this was 5, and this was 3, and this was 2, that, you're not having a uniform scale. It's ruining the whole purpose of the box plot. You got to have a scale that's independent of the values there. It's like this. You know, at regular intervals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you put everything in with that regular interval scale over here. That's number 2. And then number 3. Describe the difference between a tax deduction and tax credit. What's the big difference between these two? So, go into groups. All right, let me kind of look in on the discussion groups on this, and start with group 2. Nothing there yet. Deduction prior to taxable income, credit after. All right, we'll get clarity on that. Tax deduction is taxes you owe, tax credit is toward the taxes owed. Okay, so we're in the right direction, but all right, let me go to the camera. All right. There was a question on exam 2 that had a tax credit in it, and the vast majority of you, it was something like a $3,000 tax credit. And let's suppose you had a taxable income of $35,000, and you had a tax credit of $3,000. The vast majority of them, the most common response was people were subtracting this here, and then finding their taxes from this. But that's wrong. This, if you do that, you're treating this as a tax deduction. You're deducting from your income, but you're not supposed to do that. So if the taxable income was $35,000 and you had a tax credit of $3,000, what you do is you do the whole, column thing, and the first amount gets taxed at 10% and so on, and you do that and you come out with you owe $7,340. I just made that up. $7,350. And then what we do, because of the tax credit, is instead of subtracting it up here, you wait till you're done all the way here. Then you subtract here, and it makes a lot bigger difference. You would then only owe $4,350. It's when you impose it, tax credit goes at the very end. Reduce your taxes by that. Yeah. And so I was surprised. I learned something yesterday. I went to our accountant because we had purchased a car this year that had it was a Honda Clarity, and it has a battery, rechargeable battery, as well as gasoline. But because it has a rechargeable battery in it, I got a $7,500 tax credit. And so I was expecting that, you know, I'm going to use up part of that tax credit this year. Like if I owe $5,000, I'd use up $5,000 of it this year. But actually, I got a refund this year. We didn't use up the whole $7,500, but the difference I got back. And so we got a check this year. And I talked to my accountant and I said, hey, I thought, you know, a tax credit only happens, you know, the amount that is, you know, when you owe taxes, it offsets that. And I have to wait till, you know, the following year when I owe some more taxes. And he said there's a certain category of tax credits called refundable tax credits. And that's what I had. And so you just get it right away. So the year that you purchase the car, you get, you know, and if you don't owe any money that year, they send you a check for that much money. If we'd just subtracted it from up here, that wouldn't have made a difference of I wouldn't have had $3,000 less in taxes than I would have been paying. I would have had, it depends on my marginal tax rate. It would have decreased my total tax burden by a certain percentage, maybe 20% or something. But if it's down here at the very end that I subtracted, then it's really reducing. It's dollar for dollar good, tax credit down here. So, next question. Name the 5 common sampling methods. What are the 5 common sampling methods typically used? Okay, let me check in, see how it's going on these. Start with group 3. Got 1, 2, 3 of them. Another. We're starting to see them. Okay. All right. So, I think we got a list. So, simple random, and then stratified, simple random, stratified, systematic, convenience, simple random, stratified, systematic, cluster, and convenience. Okay, the 5 are right up here. Okay, so now your next task is give a brief description of each. Simple random, you don't need to describe, but the rest of them, what does it mean? A real quick description of each one. unplug my camera and plug it back in. Let me get off of that view, because it kind of has this blinking tendency. That seemed to help when I did that last time. Okay. Seems to stabilize it somewhat. And we have a question, what's the easiest way to draw and paste a box plot? On the exam, most people last time just did a freehand drawing of the box plot and then had a picture of that they sent in, and that would be totally acceptable. If you're going to be doing it totally electronically, that's all beyond me. I don't really know how to do that very well. Yes, copy and paste. All right, let's check in with the groups on the descriptions. Yep, systematic might be selecting every third or fifth person. Convenience, to sample those who are easily accessible. All right, and I wanted to throw in one more thing about that. We all do the most convenient way that we can do something. I mean, it would be ridiculous to do it less than the most convenient way. But we mean convenient when you're doing it the easy way that's also wrong. So it's a convenient sampling is choosing the convenient over the right method. And then cluster, you pick everybody in a certain region. Stratified, choosing one person. Stratified. All right. Stratified is when, all right. Now, these definitions of stratified, let's refine them a little bit. Is when you group. Let's look at some others for stratified. I like this simple. Everybody's got an equal chance. And stratified. All right. Let's get a better definition of stratified. I think these definitions are kind of getting at it, but we can be more clear than that. And let's go here. Yes, when you divide into groups, for instance, age or ethnicity, and then generally speaking, you take an equal number, or at least a prescribed number from each group. Now you might have, or a number that's proportional to the size of that group. So for instance, if we were, then I like John's definition for convenience. What's more easily, then what's right for the sample. Stratified is, like for instance, if there's one ethnicity that 90% of the population is like that, then your sample should also have that same percentage in its sample. So you divide into groups, and then make sure that the distribution in the sample is the same as the distribution in the general population. And that's what stratified is. All right, so we got all of those. Let's go to next one. Number 6. What's the built-in Excel function formula for two situations? We learned two different built-in Excel formulas, how to use them. One for a savings plan. I'm going to save $50 a month for a bunch of years, 10 years. And I'm going to get 6% interest, and you can figure out what your total is going to be with a built-in Excel formula. What formula is it? And the same for monthly payments. On a loan. Like suppose you got a house or a car, and then borrowed $17,000 for this car for 5 years, 5% interest. What's my monthly payment? Well, what are the built-in Excel formulas you're going to use for each of these? I'll give you a minute. Alright, let's pop over and check out. Payment is PMT. That is correct. FV is the other one. Yes, so we're getting FV and PMT. Alright, now I'm going to give you a situation, and I want to use them. I want you to use them. So this one is $50 a month for 10 years, and you're going to get 6% interest, 6% yearly interest. Okay, if we don't say yearly, it's almost always implied that it's yearly interest. Okay, and then use the appropriate formula for that, and then for this one, monthly payments on $80,000 house. Let's say it's 30-year mortgage. Suppose your interest rate is 4%. Go into Excel, figure those values out, and then once you get a value, come back in to your group and say what number you got for each of these. And if you're not agreeing, maybe you can try to work it out and figure out who's right. Okay, and I can kind of just go in and check into groups, and it tells me if people still need more time. Yeah, people are still needing more time. Okay, and Okay, we give just a tiny bit more time, and go ahead and once you get an answer, input it in your group, see if it's consistent with what others are getting. Okay, Renata posted the question, but where do you make the, I think you're talking about the box plot. And if I cut out, let me just say it again, it's totally fine, and this is what most students did, is you just draw a box plot by hand, and then take a picture of that portion and send it back in. I don't really know how to make a box plot using, you'd have to use kind of like, I don't know, paintbrush or something like this. All right, well, let's check in real quick again. All right, let me go to Excel, and let's do the first one. So I click on this insert function right here, and I'm going to do the future value FV, and that shows up down here, and so I'm going to click OK. The rate is 0.06, and then that's for a whole year though. Per month is divided by 12. Number of payments, it's 10 years, times 12 payments each year, 120. And payment that I'm putting into it is $50 each time. And so this turns out to be this, $8,193.97. And then the other one, we'll do, click on the insert function, PMT, and I can search for it up there, or I notice it's showing up right here. Click on it, the rate is 0.04 divided by 12. It's the rate per month, per period alone. Number of payments, 30 years times 12 payments a year is 360. And the present value is 80,000. That's going to give me how much it's going to cost for, let's say I had a condominium that was $80,000. That's what my monthly payment might be if I had it under these conditions, 30 years at 4%. All right, beyond these two things, let me have you do this. C, actually this is not C, this is a different one because it's not built-in Excel formula. I want you to, number 7, use a mortgage calculator. To find the monthly payment. Let me double this, $160,000, house, 30 years. So go, if we Google mortgage calculator, you can take any of a bunch of different mortgage calculators. You might see one of those pop up real quick. You've got lots of different choices, but use one of them, come out with your monthly payment. And then if each of you could report back in your group, even if you agree with somebody else's, put it in so that you can kind of compare results. Okay, we give it a little more time. You might get really different results on these mortgage calculators. And it's good to just find that out now so that when you need it sometime in the future, you're a little bit more comfortable. We give about 30 seconds more. Alright, so let's go. So if I use this one that just popped up here, and I just change this to 160,000, the interest rate to be 4, and then I am coming up with this, which is $764. Some of the other mortgage calculators, like if I did this one, I might do it on more than one to just see what's happening on this. But you see, when I do this one, it's, you know, trying to put in this property tax and all this kind of stuff. And immediately it might be asking me to, you know, are you really trying to buy a house? And then I'll put you in touch with a salesman. So I might go more with one of these, like NerdWallet or something, and I'll do it again over here. 160,000. Say I put a 0 down payment. Interest rate 4, and now notice it's getting me the same thing, 764. So I did it on 2 different ones, confirming $764. And if I was really buying a house, I might also be confirming this by going into Excel. And by the way, this one was for the $80,000 house. If I double this, double that, I'm going to get the $764. Because that's about 382. Double that is 764. So this situation is very similar to this one. If it's twice the price of the house, same terms, then the loan amount, then the monthly payment will be twice as much. But I might also go in here and just do the PMT function. Oops. Let's do it again. PMT rate 0.04 divided by 12. 12 times 30 for the number of payments, and the present value is 160,000. And there it is, $374. We rounded off to the nearest cent. So, 10 years from now, when you're actually buying a house, you might forget how to use Excel formulas to get there. But you won't forget how to use a mortgage calculator. They're super simple. You just put in the home price and your interest rate and how many years, and voila, there comes your monthly payment. All right, let's go back over here. Next question. Number 8. I think we're on number 8. The difference. Describe the difference between quantitative data and qualitative data. Okay, do that in your groups, and you'll probably get 2 or 3 different descriptions, and then you can work together to kind of refine it. Okay, let's look at a couple of these definitions or descriptions. And quantitative, qualitative. All right. There's one of them. I like this right here, what Santana put. Could avoid using numbers. Qualitative, you can somehow avoid using numbers. And it gets kind of blurry sometimes. Because if you were like to rate your instructor, give them 1 through 5 rating of the instructor. You could also be rating the instructor from poor to great and not be using numbers. So that it would tend to be more qualitative than quantitative. If you can get away with not using numbers, it'd be qualitative. Quantitative, you pretty much have to use numbers. Yep. All right, we're doing good there. Any questions on anything so far? Anything that anybody wants to more practice on? Otherwise, I'll just keep going with my agenda here. But if you see something like, oh, I want to, this wasn't clear, you can always interject and I'll spend more time. All right, you're okay with the direction we're going, so let's keep going. The next thing I want you to do is, let's go over here. 9. Without looking at a previous list, I want you to come up with, in your group, what are all the headers? You know, the words that you put at the top of each column for amortization table. So, for instance, if you can think of one of the headers, oh, I think one of them is like the monthly payment. I can't remember what it is. Just put that in. And then you all will get your list of eventually what they are, and then you can kind of start sorting them out and start putting them into, I think this one's first, this one's... Again, I'm going to give you these headers on an exam, but really to be useful to you after you walk away from this class, it'll be a lot more useful to you if you can come up with them. So this is a skill that we're practicing, not so much for the final, but for your use in life. How you would look at something like this. And that kind of use of Excel is so incredibly common that when you get into a business context, if you know how to do that, you'll be a much more valuable employee. All right, so go ahead and start working on that in your groups. Again, we call it an amortization table if it's for borrowing, paying back a loan. Okay, check in. Oh, relative percentage. Yeah, we can review that as well. Good idea. This is a nice list, And is that the order that we want them in, though? Yeah, do we want them in a different order? Okay, so let's look at this order. Very interesting. I think this has all the ingredients. The month, remaining principal, and then, and I think the remaining principal was the next thing right after the month. The payments, the interest amount, and then the principal. I like this, and the principal would be the amount paid towards principal from the payment. From the payment, there was an amount that went to interest, and then there was an amount that went to principal. And I think that's the same thing that we're seeing right here. Month, remaining debt, the payment, the amount of the payment that went to interest, and then the amount of the payment that went to principal. All right, yep, this would do it. Switch over now to headers for savings plan. You're saving like $50 a month at 4% interest for 15 years. How are you going to, what headers are you going to use to get totals? And if we kind of just slowly work our way there, that's great. Let's see. People typing away. Let me give it a little more time. And while people are typing away, let me back up and take a quick review of relative percentage. And for relative percentage, I get confused and have a hard time remembering things lots of times in math. And what saves me is I think of a really, really simple situation. All right. And so I'm going to give my candy bar and my favorite candy bar was $2. Now it's $3. And when I do a really, really simple one, it really helps and get me oriented. Absolute change was $3 minus $2, $1. That part seems really simple. It went up $1. The relative change, it has to make intuitive sense for me to remember it. And did this go up 100% to get up to here? Well, if it did, it would go from $2 to $4. What percentage did it go up? It went up, what, 50%? I know the real answer has got to be 50%. So this will help me realize, how was it? Oh yeah, it was the absolute change divided by my initial amount. So 1 over 2, which is 0.5. 0.5 is the same as 50%, like that. And the simpler the problem I can think of, the more it reinforces my intuitive understanding and enables me to go back to more complex things. Now, when we said initial, we sometimes, initial and final, sometimes that gets a little bit more complex, but if we can kind of see, what is the reference, that's often called the reference amount, and then the new amount. All right, now let's come back over here and let's look at, all right, so here, let's look at this one. Start with the month. Prior balance, yes, prior balance is going to be 0 when we first start a savings plan. And then you get some interest, and then end of month deposit, and end of month earnings plus interest, yep. And, okay, yeah. So that's kind of how it's going. And notice on this one, you're not breaking down, what went to principal and what went to interest, because it's a totally different situation. You're just putting money in, but you only, the money you're putting in is at the end of the month. So every time you have a new payment, it's not earning any interest. That's why you do the prior balance, the interest on the prior balance. You do all that before you get to end of month deposit, because that came in there already ended, didn't earn any interest. But it does add to your total. All right. The next thing is I just heard yesterday that the fall semester is going to be almost entirely online at Santa Fe Community College. There are maybe a few classes that it doesn't, like woodworking or something like this, where it makes no sense to offer that class online. And so there, I think a minimum number of classes will be have some kind of component at the community college, but pretty like all the math classes, most classes will be just online. And I would really appreciate some brainstorming. And so if you could go into your groups and start, just don't filter, just start typing in what would have made this a better experience, the second half of this class. Any way this could be improved. Things that because it's really a challenge, and I think it's probably I would imagine it got much tougher for you in the second half of this class, not having the same kind of structure that we had before. So if you could start putting some of those in, we'll kind of go through some of those suggestions. And then maybe I could even get some follow-up on any of those. So how could we make this better? Oh, also, you will be receiving an email asking you to do a rating of this class and your instructor. And if you would all do that soon, I would much appreciate that as well. Getting the evaluation is one of the primary ways that we improve instruction in the community college, but especially now during this time. So, but this will kind of supplement that as well. And I'll kind of check in on what we're seeing. All right, so that's some positive feedback. That's good to hear. And all right. Are there any other questions? Anything else anybody wants to go over? And Renata, was that enough with the relative percentage? Or do you need me to go over that in more detail? Any other issues or questions? All right. Well then, I think that's all I have for you here, and it's been a pleasure. And you all stay safe. There's no more regular classes. The next time that we are doing something, it is the final exam, which is a week from today. There won't really be a class then either. I'll get on Discord that time and I'll just say the no class and just do the final exam. But if any issues or anything come up, you could type something into Discord, or you could send me an email. Same time as class, so it'll be 1 o'clock next Wednesday, May 13th. That's the final exam. You have some things due today. Paying off the mortgage project and 4D. Both of those are due. And we'll stop here. You're welcome. And I got to remember to stop the recording.